Imagine dropping your 5-year-old off at school one morning, and by afternoon, their teacher is in handcuffs. Now imagine, 2 years later, that teacher walks free. Not because of a technicality, not because of a deal, but because 12 strangers looked at everything, every piece of evidence, every single accusation, and said, "Not guilty." This is one of the most controversial acquittals in recent American memory. And depending on which side you're on, it's either a story about justice working exactly the way it should, or a story about how the system failed the most vulnerable people it was supposed to protect. Stay with me, because this story gets complicated fast. A small American community, the kind of town where everybody knows everybody, where parents wave to each other at school drop-off, where the local kindergarten teacher isn't just an employee, she's practically a neighborhood fixture. We'll call her Ms. K for this video, because even though her name was made public during the trial, this story isn't about destroying someone. It's about understanding what happened. Ms. K had been teaching young children for years. By most accounts, she was beloved. Parents trusted her. Kids loved her. She was the kind of teacher who remembered every child's birthday, who stayed after hours to help struggling students, who parents specifically requested when enrolling their kids. And then, one day, everything changed. It started with a single child. A parent noticed something that seemed off, a behavioral change, a comment made at bedtime that didn't sit right, the kind of thing that makes a parent's stomach drop, and their mind race to the worst possible place. They reported it, and investigators got involved. What followed was an investigation that would grow, and grow, and grow. As word spread through the community, more families came forward. Then more after that. By the time prosecutors had finished gathering statements, they had built a case that included 22 separate counts of child molestation. 22. Let that number sit for a second. 22 individual accusations against one kindergarten teacher, in one school, over what investigators said was an extended period of time. The community was shaken to its core. Parents were pulling their kids out of school. Teachers were being questioned. Everyone was looking at everyone else with suspicion. And Ms. K, she was arrested, charged, and the story exploded into the local news, and then beyond. On the surface, the case looked overwhelming. Multiple children, detailed statements, a pattern that seemed clear to investigators. But here's where it gets complicated. The defense had a completely different story to tell. Defense attorneys pushed back hard. They raised questions that prosecutors did not have clean answers for. First, the interviews. Child testimony in cases like this is incredibly sensitive. There are strict protocols for how investigators are supposed to speak with young children. Specific techniques, careful, neutral language. The goal is to draw out the truth without accidentally planting a version of events in a young child's mind. The defense argued those protocols weren't followed properly. They suggested that children, who are naturally eager to please adults, naturally responsive to emotional cues, may have told investigators what they sensed was expected, rather than what actually happened. This is a recognized psychological phenomenon. It's not about calling kids liars. It's about understanding how memory and suggestion interact in young minds under high-pressure questioning. Second, the physical evidence. In abuse cases, physical evidence can be decisive. But in this case, it was murky at best, contested, incomplete, nothing that definitively corroborated the accusations. Third, the timeline. The defense pointed out inconsistencies in when things were alleged to have happened versus when they were logistically possible. Classroom schedules, supervision patterns, moments that allegedly occurred in spaces that weren't as private as described. And fourth, perhaps most powerfully, character witnesses lined up for Ms. K. Colleagues, former students now in higher grades, even some parents who hadn't joined the accusations, all saying the same thing: this doesn't match the person we know. The prosecution, of course, pushed back on all of it. They argued that children don't fabricate stories like this out of nowhere, that where there's smoke, there's fire, that 22 counts don't materialize from nothing. Both sides had a point, and that is exactly what made this trial so agonizing to watch. The jury deliberated. Hours passed, then a full day, then more. People outside the courthouse held their breath. Parents on one side, supporters of Ms. K on the other, reporters, cameras, tension thick enough to cut. And then the verdict came in. Not guilty. On all 22 counts, the courtroom erupted. Supporters of Ms. K broke down crying. Some parents who had brought accusations sat in stunned silence. News cameras caught faces, disbelief, relief, fury, confusion, all in the same room at the same time. Ms. K walked out of that courthouse a free woman. But here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. A not guilty verdict doesn't mean nothing happened, and it doesn't mean something did. In the American legal system, not guilty means the prosecution could not prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard. That's how it's supposed to work. It is deliberately a high bar because we decided as a society that it is better for some guilty people to go free than for innocent people to be imprisoned. But that principle is cold comfort when you're a parent. And it is cold comfort if you're the person who was accused. Because Ms. K's life, it will never be what it was. Even after acquittal, the accusations don't disappear from the internet. They don't disappear from people's minds. Her teaching career, almost certainly over. Her reputation in that community, permanently fractured no matter what a jury decided. And the families who came forward, they live with what their children said. They live with what they believe happened. And a court telling them not proven beyond a reasonable doubt does not erase what they fear. Nobody won here. Not really. But here's the question that nobody has been able to fully answer. The one that keeps rattling around long after the verdict. If the accusations were the result of flawed interviews and psychological suggestion, how did so many children end up saying such similar things? And if something did happen, how did the prosecution fail to prove it to 12 jurors? Or, is it possible that in the desperate, terrifying urgency to protect children, a process meant to find the truth accidentally created one instead? That question doesn't have a clean answer. And maybe that's the most disturbing part of this entire story. Not the verdict, not the accusations, but the fact that we are left with a gap, right in the middle of what happened, that no one can fill with certainty. A teacher who says she is innocent, children whose families believe otherwise, and a jury that looked at all of it and said the state hadn't proven its case. What do you believe? Cases like this one crack open something uncomfortable about our justice system, about child testimony, about how communities respond when fear takes hold. There are no easy answers here, and honestly, I don't think there should be. If this story made you think, if it stirred something up inside you, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know, do you think the jury got it right? Do you think the system worked the way it was supposed to? Or do you think someone wasn't protected who should have been? Your perspective matters, and I genuinely read these comments. If you're new here, welcome. We cover cases just like this one. Stories where the truth isn't clean, where the lines blur, where justice and certainty don't always land in the same place. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this video made you think, share it with someone who likes asking hard questions. I'll see you in the next one.